Long before telescopes pierced the veil of distance, long before equations mapped the curve of space-time, human eyes turned upward and asked the first question: what holds the stars? The ancients did not see the universe as we do now. They saw a living architecture, a breathing geometry. They saw gods walking between constellations, rivers flowing upside down in the heavens, mountains holding up the sky. They built their temples to mirror what they believed moved above them, and in doing so, they built the first maps of everything. This is how they imagined it all. 1. The First Watchers. It begins not in cities, but in silence. Imagine a ridge of stone 10,000 years before history learned to write itself down. The night sky stretches unbroken, deeper than any ocean, more vast than any desert the daylight world could offer. No electric hum, no glow from distant roads, just darkness, and within it, the scattered light of all creation. A figure sits on that ridge. There are others nearby, but they do not speak. They have learned that speech frightens the animals. They have learned that stillness brings clarity. And so they watch. Night after night, season after season, the sky does something extraordinary. It repeats itself. The moon waxes and wanes with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Certain stars rise in the east just before dawn, vanish for weeks, then return as if resurrected. Patterns emerge. The sky is not chaos. It is a vast and perfect machine, grinding forward with invisible gears, and if you watch long enough, you can hear it turning. These early watchers had no writing. They had no bronze, no iron, no stone temples. But they had memory, and they had awe. And from those two things, the first cosmologies were born. They noticed that certain stars never moved. They hung in the north, rotating slowly around a single fixed point, like cattle circling a stake. Other stars rose and set with the seasons. Some appeared only in summer, others only in winter. These stars marked time. They told the watchers when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare for the cold months ahead. The moon was even more reliable. It changed shape in a pattern that repeated every 29 or 30 days. Women noticed that their bodies followed the same rhythm. The tides followed it too. The moon was not just light in the darkness. It was a clock, a calendar, a force that reached down from the sky and touched the earth. And the sun was everything. It brought warmth, light, life itself. When it rose high in the sky, plants grew. When it sank low, they withered. Every living thing oriented itself toward the sun. Even the dead were buried facing east, toward the sunrise, toward rebirth. These early humans did not yet have gods, not as we understand them. But they had reverence. They understood that they were small, and the sky was vast, and something in that vastness governed their lives. The first cosmology was not written, it was lived. 2. The circle and the cycle. The earliest humans to contemplate the heavens did not imagine a beginning or an end. They imagined a circle. The sun rose and set. The moon waxed and waned. The seasons turned and turned again. Death returned to life in the spring. Seeds became grain. Grain became bread. Bread became bodies, and bodies returned to the earth to grow more seeds. Every process in the world was circular, and so the universe itself must be a circle, or many circles nested within one another, turning at different speeds. The ancient Egyptians would later refine this into doctrine. They would say the sun god Ra sailed across the sky in a golden boat by day, then descended into the underworld by night to do battle with the serpent of chaos before rising again at dawn. The universe to them was not a place, but a journey endlessly repeated, a loop with no exit. The sky was not empty above, it was a goddess named Nut, her body arched across the heavens, swallowing the sun each evening and giving birth to it each morning. Her body was painted on the ceilings of tombs, stretched in an impossible arc, her fingertips touching the eastern horizon, her toes touching the west. Stars dotted her skin like jewels. She was not a metaphor. She was literal. The sky was her flesh. Beneath her lay her husband Geb, the earth god, reclining in green and brown, his body the fields and deserts of Egypt. Between them, holding them apart, stood Shu, god of air, his arms raised to keep sky and earth from collapsing back into primordial unity. This was the structure of the cosmos, gods formed from the void, gods holding the world in place through constant effort. Without them, everything would dissolve. But even before Egypt carved its first hieroglyph, the people of the Neolithic had begun marking time in stone. At Newgrange in Ireland, a passage tomb was constructed so that on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, sunlight would penetrate deep into the inner chamber and illuminate a spiral carved into the stone. It was a message from the builders. We have measured the darkness. We know when it will end. The sun will return. At Göbekli Tepe in Anatolia, massive T-shaped pillars were erected in circles, carved with animals and abstract symbols. The site predates pottery, predates agriculture, predates everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. And yet these people, whoever they were, devoted enormous labor to creating something sacred, something aligned to the stars. These were not mere calendars. They were arguments made in granite. The universe is ordered. The universe is knowable. The universe is sacred. To know the cycles of the heavens was to know the mind of the gods, and to mark those cycles in stone was to participate in the cosmos itself, to make the ephemeral permanent, to turn time into space, to build eternity. 3. The weight of the sky. As villages became towns and towns became cities, a new question arose. What holds it all up? The sky is vast. It does not fall, but why? Across Mesopotamia, between the twin rivers where the first cities rose from mud and reeds, the answer seemed obvious. The sky was a solid dome, a great inverted bowl of lapis lazuli, studded with stars like jewels hammered into metal. Beneath it, the earth floated on an infinite ocean of fresh water, the Abzu, an abyss older than the gods themselves. But who kept the dome from collapsing? The Sumerians said it was held by the god Enlil, lord of air and storms, who separated heaven from earth at the beginning of time. Before that separation, there was only the primordial waters, salt and fresh, male and female, coiled together in the dark. Then the gods were born, and with them came violence. The younger gods slew the older ones, split the body of the great mother Tiamat, and from her corpse they fashioned the cosmos. Half of her became the sky, half became the earth. Her tears became the rivers, her ribs became the mountains. It is a brutal cosmology, but it is also deeply practical. It explains why the world is as it is, built from conflict, held together by force, always threatening to collapse back into the formless chaos from which it came. The creation myth was not just a story. It was recited annually during the New Year festival in Babylon. The Enuma Elish, when on high, was chanted by priests as the city renewed its covenant with the gods. By retelling the story of how Marduk defeated Tiamat and created order from chaos, the Babylonians believed they were actively maintaining the structure of the universe. The cosmos required ritual. It required remembrance. Without the story, the world might forget how to exist. The Babylonians, inheritors of Sumer, would later map the heavens with obsessive care. They divided the sky into constellations and assigned each one a deity, a story, a fate. They discovered that planets moved differently than stars' wanderers against the fixed backdrop, and so they named them after gods. Jupiter became Marduk, king of heaven. Venus became Ishtar, goddess of war and desire. The movements of these planets were omens. To predict their paths was to predict the will of heaven, and so astronomy was born not from curiosity, but from fear. The priests kept careful records. They noted when planets appeared in the morning sky versus the evening sky. They tracked eclipses. They observed which constellations rose heliacally just before dawn at different times of the year. These observations were not abstract. They were urgent. The king needed to know if the gods favored his military campaigns. The farmers needed to know when to plant. The entire civilization depended on reading the sky correctly. One of the oldest astronomical texts, the Molopin, catalogues stars and constellations, records the dates of equinoxes and solstices, and provides a calendar for agricultural and religious activities. It was written on clay tablets around 1000 BCE, but it records observations, much older knowledge, accumulated over centuries, passed from one generation of priests to the next. The Babylonians understood that the sky was a text, and they devoted their lives to learning how to read it. 4. The pillars of heaven. In other lands, different answers emerged. The ancient Hebrews imagined the sky as a firmament, a solid dome hammered flat by God and placed above the earth like a tent over a camp. The word used in Genesis is rakia, which means something beaten out, like metal worked into a thin sheet. Above the firmament was water. Below it, water. The earth was a disk floating between two infinite seas, and the firmament kept the upper waters from crashing down and drowning the world. When it rained, it was because God had opened small windows in the firmament to let the waters trickle through. When the great flood came in the time of Noah, it was because God opened all the windows at once, and the fountains of the deep burst forth from below, and the world returned briefly, terribly to the chaos before creation. The flood was not punishment alone, it was uncreation. A reversal of the cosmic order established in Genesis. The waters above and the waters below, which God had separated on the second day, were allowed to merge again. The world dissolved. Only Noah and his family, safe in their wooden ark, floated on the surface of annihilation and waited for God to remember them. And God did remember. The waters receded. The dove returned with an olive branch. A rainbow appeared, the first rainbow, according to the text, as a sign that God would never again destroy the world by water. The covenant was not just with humanity, it was with the cosmos itself. The structure would hold, but even this dome needed support. And so the pillars of heaven were imagined, vast columns at the edges of the earth, rising from the abyss, holding the sky in place. No mortal had ever seen them, but they had to exist. The world could not stand without them. In the Psalms, the earth is described as resting on foundations, set upon pillars that God established. The language is poetic, but the image is architectural. The universe is a building. And like all buildings, it requires a foundation, walls, a roof. The dome of the sky is held up by invisible supports, just as the great cedar beams in Solomon's temple held up the roof of the holy place. The Greeks would later adopt a similar image. They said the Titan Atlas held the sky on his shoulders, condemned by Zeus to bear that weight forever as punishment for rebellion. The sky was not immaterial. It had mass. It pressed down with unimaginable force. Atlas stood at the edge of the world where the ocean met the void and kept the heavens from crushing the earth. In some versions of the myth, Atlas did not hold the sky directly. He held the pillars that supported it. Either way, the image is the same. The cosmos is heavy. It requires strength to maintain. And that strength is provided by a being who suffers eternally, so that the rest of us can live beneath a stable sky. The Greeks, always restless, always questioning, would not stop there. 5. The spheres begin to turn. In the 6th century before the Common Era, in the Greek colonies along the coast of Anatolia, a new kind of thinking emerged: philosophy. Men like Thales of Miletus began to ask, what if the gods are not the answer? What if the universe operates by natural principles, laws that can be discovered through reason alone? Thales said the earth floated on water. Anaximenes said the stars were fires embedded in a crystalline sphere that rotated around the earth. Anaximander went further. He proposed that the earth was a cylinder suspended in the center of the cosmos, held in place by symmetry. If it fell, it would have no reason to fall in one direction rather than another, and so it remained motionless. These ideas were crude, incomplete, but they were revolutionary. For the first time, humans were imagining a universe that did not require divine intervention to function, a cosmos that ran by itself like a mechanism. Then came Pythagoras. Pythagoras and his followers believed the universe was made of music. They discovered that the intervals of the musical scale, octaves, fifths, fourths, corresponded to simple mathematical ratios. A string half the length of another produces a note 1 octave higher. A string 2/3 the length produces a perfect fifth. This was not opinion, it was truth, written into the fabric of reality. And if music could be expressed in numbers, why not everything else? The Pythagoreans proposed that the heavenly bodies were attached to invisible spheres, each rotating at a different speed, each producing a tone as it moved through the ether. These tones combined into a harmony, the music of the spheres which humans could not hear because they had been listening to it since birth and had grown deaf to its perfection. The universe, they said, was a cosmic lyre, and God was the musician. But the Pythagoreans went even further. They believed that numbers were not just descriptions of reality. Numbers were reality. The universe was not made of earth, water, air, and fire. It was made of 1, 2, 3, 4. The number 1 was the point. 2 was the line. 3 was the plane. 4 was the solid. From these numbers, all shapes could be constructed, and from shapes, all matter. They discovered the Pythagorean theorem. In a right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares of the other two sides. This was not an invention, it was a discovery. The relationship had always existed. Mathematics was not created by humans, it was revealed to them. This idea that the universe is fundamentally mathematical would become one of the most powerful and enduring insights in the history of thought. It persists to this day. Modern physicists speak of the universe as a set of equations, a mathematical structure that happens to be instantiated in matter and energy. The Pythagoreans intuited this 2,500 years ago, but they also believed something stranger. They believed that numbers had personalities. One was unity, the monad, the source of all other numbers. 2 was duality, division, the female principle. 3 was harmony, the resolution of conflict. 4 was stability, the foundation. 10 was perfection, the tetractys, the holy number that contained all others. They swore oaths by the tetractys. They prayed to it. Mathematics, for them, was not just science, it was religion. 6. The earth at the center. By the 4th century before the Common Era, Greek cosmology had crystallized into something remarkable. Plato and his student Aristotle argued that the universe was a series of concentric spheres, all nested within one another, like the layers of an onion. At the very center was the earth, unmoving, perfect in its stillness. Around it rotated the sphere of the moon, beyond that, the sphere of Mercury. Then Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. And finally, the outermost sphere, the fixed stars, all embedded in a crystalline shell that completed one full rotation every 24 hours. Each sphere was made of a perfect, incorruptible substance called ether. Each moved in perfect circles, because the circle was the most perfect shape, and the heavens could not be anything less than perfect. Below the moon, in what was called the sublunary realm, everything was imperfect. The 4 elements, earth, water, air, fire, mixed and decayed, rose and fell, sought their natural levels. Fire rose because its natural place was near the sphere of the moon. Earth fell because its natural place was at the center. This was not divine will. It was natural law. A stone fell not because God pushed it down, but because earth naturally moved toward the center of the cosmos. Smoke rose not because it was light, but because fire naturally moved upward, away from the center. The universe was a nested set of shells, and everything had its proper place within those shells. But above the moon, there was no decay, no change. The stars and planets moved through the ether in eternal, unchanging paths, and this motion was itself divine. The universe, Aristotle argued, had always existed and would always exist. It had no beginning. It needed no creator. It simply was, perfect and complete, a vast machine driven by the unmoved mover, a God who thinks only of himself, and in thinking sets the heavens in motion. This unmoved mover was not the personal God of the Hebrews or the capricious gods of Olympus. It was pure thought thinking itself. It did not create the universe. It did not intervene in human affairs. It simply existed, perfect and self-sufficient. And the rest of the cosmos, driven by love and desire for that perfection, moved in eternal circles, trying to imitate it. Aristotle's cosmology was not based on faith. It was based on observation and logic. He noted that heavy objects fall faster than light ones, an observation that seemed obvious and would not be challenged for 2,000 years. He noted that the stars never change position relative to one another, which suggested they were fixed to a single rotating sphere. He noted that the Earth must be round, because during a lunar eclipse, the shadow it cast on the moon was always circular. This cosmology would dominate Western thought for nearly 2,000 years. It would be adopted by Christian theologians who placed God and the angels in the highest sphere, beyond the fixed stars. It would be refined by Islamic scholars who made more precise observations and corrected some of Aristotle's errors. But the basic structure, Earth at the center, heavens rotating around it in perfect spheres, remained unchallenged until the Renaissance. It was a beautiful system, elegant, coherent, comforting, and almost entirely wrong. 7. The path of the wanderers. But there was a problem. The planets did not move in simple circles. Greek astronomers tracking the movements of Mars and Jupiter and Saturn across the night sky noticed something disturbing. The planets wandered. They moved forward through the constellations, then slowed, stopped, moved backward for a time, then resumed their forward motion. They traced loops in the sky retrograde motion, and no one could explain why. If the heavens were perfect, why did the planets behave so strangely? The answer came from a mathematician named Apollonius, refined by Hipparchus and perfected by Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century of the Common Era. Epicycles. Ptolemy proposed that each planet moved in a small circle, an epicycle, while the center of that small circle moved along a larger circle, the deferent, around the Earth. From the perspective of an observer on Earth, this combination of circular motions would produce the appearance of retrograde loops. It was ingenious, it was mathematically elegant, and it worked. Ptolemy's model could predict the positions of the planets with remarkable accuracy. His great work, the Almagest, became the definitive astronomical text for over a millennium. But the model was also complex. Some planets required multiple epicycles stacked on top of one another. Some required the center of the deferent to be slightly offset from the Earth, a point called the eccentric. And some required an additional mathematical trick, the equant, a point from which the planet appeared to move at constant angular velocity, even though it was actually speeding up and slowing down. The result was a model that could predict planetary positions within a degree or two of accuracy, but at the cost of introducing dozens of circles and geometric points. The heavens were no longer simple. They were baroque, a vast celestial clockwork of nested circles spinning at different rates, coordinated by mathematical relationships that no one fully understood. Still, it worked. And for the ancient and medieval mind, that was enough. The universe did not have to be simple. It had to be accurate. And Ptolemy's model was the most accurate description of planetary motion that would exist for over 1,000 years. But there was something unsatisfying about it. The model felt contrived. The epicycles, the equants, the eccentrics, they all seemed like patches, fixes applied to preserve the fundamental assumption that everything moved in circles and the Earth was at the center. A few ancient thinkers questioned this assumption. Aristarchus of Samos in the 3rd century BCE proposed that the Earth and planets orbited the Sun, and that the Earth rotated on its axis once per day. This would explain the apparent motion of the stars and simplify the planetary orbits considerably. But Aristarchus's heliocentric model was rejected. It contradicted common sense. If the Earth moved, why didn't we feel it? Why didn't objects fly off into space? Why didn't the stars show parallax a shift in position as the Earth moved through its orbit? These were reasonable objections, and Aristarchus had no good answers. His model was forgotten. Ptolemy's geocentric model prevailed. The ancient cosmology remained intact. Earth at the center, heavens rotating in perfect circles, guided by divine intelligence or natural law. It would take a revolution, a Copernican revolution, to overturn it. But that revolution was still centuries away. For now, the ancient universe held, stable, ordered, knowable. 8. The River of Stars. Not all ancient peoples imagined the heavens as spheres and circles. In China, the cosmos was conceived as a great organism, breathing with life, pulsing with energy, called qi. The sky was not a dome but a canopy, and the earth was not a sphere but a square, divided into 9 provinces that mirrored the 9 divisions of heaven. At the center of this cosmic order was the emperor, the son of heaven, whose duty it was to maintain harmony between the earthly and celestial realms. If he ruled justly, the heavens remained orderly. If he failed, the stars themselves would rebel. Comets would appear. Eclipses would darken the sun. The mandate of heaven would pass to another. Chinese astronomers kept meticulous records of celestial events. They charted the paths of comets, noted the appearance of guest stars, what we now call supernovae, and divided the sky into 28 lunar mansions, each associated with a constellation, a season, a direction, an element. But the most striking feature of Chinese cosmology was the Milky Way. They called it Tianhe, the River of Heaven. It was not merely a band of stars, but an actual river flowing through the sky, separating the mortal realm from the immortal. On one side of the river lived the Weaver Girl, a celestial maiden who wove the clouds. On the other side lived the cowherd, a mortal who had earned his place among the stars. They were in love, but the river kept them apart. Once a year, on the 7th day of the 7th month, a bridge of magpies would form across the Milky Way, and the lovers would meet for a single night before being separated again. It is a myth, but it is also an astronomy lesson. The 2 stars, Vega and Altair, are visible on opposite sides of the Milky Way, and their movements through the sky do suggest a kind of eternal separation. The story encodes astronomical knowledge in narrative form, making it memorable, passing it down through generations, not as data, but as longing. The Chinese did not see the universe as a machine. They saw it as a living body, with qi flowing through it like blood through veins. The earth had qi, the sky had qi, humans had qi. And when these 3 realms were in harmony, life flourished. When they fell out of balance, disaster followed. This cosmology led to practices like feng shui, literally wind water, the art of arranging buildings and objects to optimize the flow of qi. A house built on a dragon line would bring prosperity. A tomb facing the wrong direction would bring misfortune. The universe was not neutral, it was responsive, and humans could, through careful attention and ritual, align themselves with its currents. Chinese astronomers also developed sophisticated models of planetary motion. By the 1st century BCE, they had calculated the synodic periods of the 5 visible planets with impressive accuracy. They predicted eclipses. They divided the day into 12 double hours, each associated with an animal of the zodiac. They tracked the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis that causes the position of the stars to shift over centuries. But unlike the Greeks, the Chinese did not feel compelled to reduce the heavens to geometry. They were content to observe, record, and seek harmony. The universe was not a problem to be solved. It was a relationship to be cultivated. 9. The waters above and below. In ancient India, the cosmos was imagined on a scale that dwarfs even modern understanding. The Rig Veda, one of the oldest religious texts in existence, describes creation as emerging from a cosmic sacrifice. The primordial being, Purusha, was dismembered by the gods, and from his body the universe was made. His mind became the moon, his eye became the sun, his breath became the wind, His navel became the atmosphere, his feet became the earth. This is not metaphor. This is cosmology. The universe is not separate from the divine. It is the body of the divine, broken and scattered. Every part of creation is sacred because every part is literally God stuff. But the earth itself was not simple. Later, Hindu cosmology would describe the universe as a series of nested realms, each vaster than the last. At the center was Mount Meru, a golden mountain so tall it pierced the heavens. Around it rotated the sun and moon and stars, held in place by invisible cords. Below Meru were 7 layers of the underworld, each darker and stranger than the last. Above it were 7 layers of heaven, each more luminous, each inhabited by gods of increasing power. And the earth? The earth rested on the backs of 4 elephants. The elephants stood on the shell of a great turtle, and the turtle swam in an infinite ocean of milk. When the turtle shifted, earthquakes shook the world. This is not ignorance, this is poetry. It is an attempt to describe the indescribable, to give shape to forces beyond comprehension. The turtle and the elephants are metaphors for stability, for the mysterious support that keeps the world from dissolving into chaos. The ocean of milk represents the primordial substance from which all things are churned into being. In the great myth of the churning of the ocean, the gods and demons work together to churn the cosmic milk using Mount Meru as a churning rod and the serpent Vasuki as a rope. From this churning emerged treasures, the elixir of immortality, the goddess Lakshmi, the wish-fulfilling tree, the moon. But also poison, so much poison that it threatens to destroy the universe, until Shiva drinks it and holds it in his throat, which turns blue from the toxin. Creation requires destruction. Order requires chaos. The universe is not a gift handed down from above. It is a violent, collaborative process in which even the gods struggle and suffer. But Hindu cosmology went even further. It proposed that the universe was not eternal. It was cyclical. Every universe was born, existed for a vast period called a kalpa, 4.32 billion years, and then was destroyed, only to be reborn again. The god Brahma created the universe. Vishnu preserved it. Shiva destroyed it. And then the cycle began anew. Within each kalpa were smaller cycles. The yugas, 4 great ages, each shorter and more corrupt than the last. The Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, lasted 1.728 million years. The Treta Yuga lasted 1.2 to 96 million years. The Dvapara Yuga lasted 864,000 years. And the Kali Yuga, the age we are in now, lasts only 432,000 years. We are currently about 5,000 years into the Kali Yuga. According to Hindu cosmology, we have 427,000 years left before the world ends in fire and flood and is reborn into a new Satya Yuga. These numbers are not arbitrary. They are based on careful astronomical observations and mathematical relationships. The ancient Indian astronomers noticed patterns in the movements of the planets and extrapolated them across vast timescales. They were attempting to find the great cycle, the moment when all the planets would return to their starting positions and the cosmic clock would reset. Modern astronomy has vindicated some of this thinking. The universe does appear to be about 4.32 billion years old, not exactly, but close enough that the ancient calculation is astonishing. The idea of cyclical time, of universes being born and dying, has found echoes in theories of oscillating universes and the multiverse. The ancient Indians were thinking on cosmic scales that the West would not reach until the 20th century. 10. The ladder between worlds. The ancient peoples of Mesoamerica, the Maya, the Aztec, the Zapotec, imagined the universe as a vertical structure. There were 13 layers of heaven above, 9 layers of the underworld below, and the earth, our world, was a thin disk sandwiched between them. The sky was not empty. It was crowded with gods, each layer ruled by a different deity, each with its own character and dangers. To reach the highest heaven, the soul had to climb. It had to pass through trials, avoid demons, answer riddles posed by skeletal gods. Most souls failed. Most sank into Mictlan, the land of the dead, where they dissolved into nothingness over the course of 4 years. But warriors who died in battle and women who died in childbirth were granted a special fate. They became companions of the sun. Each morning they helped carry the sun from the eastern horizon to its zenith. Then they released it, and it descended into the west, where it entered the underworld and did battle with the forces of darkness until it could rise again. The sun was not a ball of gas. It was a god, constantly threatened, constantly needing the strength of the dead to survive. This is why the Aztecs performed human sacrifice. They believed the sun required blood to continue its journey. Without it, the universe would end. To modern sensibilities, this is horrifying. But to the Aztecs, it was deeply logical. The universe was not a gift. It was a burden. The gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world, and so humans owed them a debt that could only be repaid in blood. The creation myth tells of 5 suns, 5 worlds each destroyed in turn. The first sun was destroyed by jaguars, the second by hurricanes, the third by fire, the fourth by flood. The current sun, the 5th, will be destroyed by earthquakes. To delay this destruction, to buy time for humanity, the Aztecs fed the sun. Thousands of captives were sacrificed atop the Great Pyramid in Tenochtitlan, their hearts cut out and offered to the heavens, their blood flowing down the steps. This was not cruelty, it was cosmology enacted. The universe was a battleground, and every dawn was a victory snatched from the jaws of annihilation. The Maya had a similar cosmology but approached it differently. They were obsessed with time. They developed multiple calendars: the Tzolk'in, a 260-day ritual calendar; the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar; the Long Count, which tracked days from a mythical starting point in 3114 BCE. These calendars intermeshed like gears, creating cycles within cycles until the entire system repeated itself every 52 years in a ceremony called the New Fire. On the night of the New Fire, all fires in the city were extinguished. The people waited in darkness, fearing that the sun might not rise again. Then, at midnight, priests on a hilltop would light a new fire and carry it to the temple. From that sacred flame, every fire in the city would be relit. The cycle was renewed. The universe continued. The Maya also believed the cosmos had a center, the world tree, a great Kaba tree that connected the underworld, the earth, and the heavens. Its roots reached down into Xibalba, the place of fear. Its trunk passed through the earth. Its branches spread into the 13 heavens. The Milky Way was seen as this tree, or as the great serpent that coiled around it. The sky was a living mythic geography, and every star had a story, every constellation a meaning. To look up was to read the will of the gods. 11. The egg of creation. In many ancient cosmologies, the universe began as an egg. The Chinese told of Pangu, a primordial giant who slept inside a cosmic egg for 18,000 years. When he finally awoke, he cracked the egg open. The lighter, purer elements floated up to become the sky. The heavier elements sank down to become the earth. And Pangu stood between them, growing taller each day, pushing heaven and earth farther apart until they could no longer collapse back together. When Pangu finally died, his body became the world. His breath became the wind. His voice became thunder. His left eye became the sun. His right eye the moon. His blood became the rivers. His hair became the stars. His bones became mountains. His flesh became soil, and the parasites on his body became humanity. We are, in this telling, the smallest and least significant part of creation, but we are still part of it, still woven into the fabric of everything. The ancient Greeks also spoke of a cosmic egg. Orphic tradition held that in the beginning there was only chaos, a formless void. From chaos came night, and night laid a silver egg. From that egg hatched Phanes, the first god, a being of perfect light who created the heavens and the earth and all the gods that followed. Phanes was androgynous, containing both male and female within a single body. From Phanes came Eros, the force of desire that drives all creation. And from Eros came the separation into multiplicity, male and female, light and dark, heaven and earth. In Hindu cosmology, the universe emerged from the golden egg of Hiranyagarbha, which floated alone in the cosmic ocean before splitting in two to form heaven and earth. The egg contained all potential. It was both nothing and everything, formless yet containing all forms. Why the egg? Perhaps because it is a symbol every human understands. An egg contains potential. It is fragile and strong. It is small, but holds the blueprint for something vast. It must be broken for life to emerge. The universe, the ancients intuited, was like that. Something whole had to be shattered for multiplicity to exist. Unity had to die so that the many could be born. There is a paradox at the heart of creation. Unity is perfect, but sterile. Multiplicity is chaotic, but fertile. The egg represents that moment of transition, the instant before the crack, when everything is still possible, when the universe is both one and many, both silent and singing. To imagine creation as an egg is to acknowledge that existence requires breaking. The shell must fracture, the yolk must spill, something must die so that something else can live. And in that breaking, in that necessary violence, the cosmos is born. 12. The axis of the world. At the center of many ancient cosmologies stands a pillar, a mountain, a tree, some vertical structure that connects the earth to the heavens and the underworld. The Norse called it Yggdrasil, the world tree, an immense ash whose roots reached down into the frozen realm of Hell, whose trunk passed through Midgard, the world of humans, and whose branches stretched up into Asgard, the realm of the gods. 3 roots anchored the tree. Beneath one root was a well of wisdom, guarded by Mimir, who had drunk from it and gained all knowledge. Beneath another, a well of fate, tended by the Norns, who wove the destinies of gods and men. Beneath the third, a gnawing serpent that chewed constantly at the root, trying to bring the tree down. At the top of the tree perched an eagle. At the base coiled the serpent Nidhogg. Between them ran a squirrel named Ratatoskr, carrying insults back and forth, ensuring that eagle and serpent remained locked in eternal enmity. The universe, in Norse thought, was not peaceful. It was unstable, teetering on the edge of collapse. One day the serpent would succeed in gnawing through the root. The tree would fall. The gods would fight their final battle against the forces of chaos. The world would burn, drown, and freeze. And then, from the ruins, a new world would emerge, green and innocent, and the cycle would begin again. This apocalypse was called Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. It was not a possibility. It was a certainty. The Norse did not believe in eternal victory. They believed in eternal struggle. The best one could hope for was to fight bravely when the end came. In Mesopotamia, the axis took the form of a mountain. The ziggurat, the Great Step Pyramid, was not merely a temple, but a model of the cosmos. Its base represented the earth. Its summit represented heaven. And the god descended from the heavens to meet the priest who ascended from the earth. And in that meeting, the two realms were briefly joined. The ziggurat was called the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. It was the point where the divine and the mortal intersected. To climb the ziggurat was to climb the architecture of reality itself. The most famous ziggurat, the Tower of Babel, was an attempt to build such an axis without divine permission. According to the biblical account, humanity tried to build a tower that reached to heaven, and God, displeased by this arrogance, confused their languages and scattered them across the earth. But the story preserves a memory of something real. The ziggurats were immense. The ziggurat of Babylon, called Itamananki, rose about 90 meters into the sky. It was visible for miles across the flat Mesopotamian plain. It was a statement, we are here. We are reaching upward. We are trying to touch the gods. And perhaps that is the function of the world axis, not to succeed in connecting heaven and earth, but to embody the longing to do so. The tree, the mountain, the tower. These are not paths. They are aspirations made solid. They are the human desire for transcendence, built in stone and wood, reaching always upward, never quite arriving. 13. The underworld reflection. Just as the ancients mapped the heavens, so too they mapped what lay below. The underworld was not hell, not yet. It was simply the place where the dead lived on, diminished but not destroyed. It was a mirror of the world above, but darker, quieter, drained of color and warmth. The Mesopotamians called it Irkalla, a land of dust and silence ruled by the goddess Ereshkigal. To enter, the dead had to pass through 7 gates, removing one piece of clothing or jewelry at each gate until they arrived naked and powerless before the throne of the Queen of the Dead. There was no judgment. There was no reward or punishment. There was only existence, gray and endless. The living could not visit Irkalla, with one exception, the goddess Inanna. She descended into the underworld to confront her sister Ereshkigal, passing through the 7 gates, stripping away her divine regalia until she stood vulnerable and mortal. Ereshkigal killed her and hung her corpse on a hook. But Inanna's servants rescued her, and she returned to the world above, though not unchanged. The underworld left its mark. The Greeks imagined the underworld as a vast geography. First came the river Styx, which encircled the land of the dead. The ferryman Charon carried souls across for the price of a single coin placed in the mouth of the corpse by the living. Once across, the dead encountered Cerberus, the 3-headed dog who allowed all to enter but none to leave. Inside, the underworld was divided into regions. The asphodel meadows, where ordinary souls wandered aimlessly, their memories fading, their identities dissolving into the gray fog. Tartarus, a deep pit where the Titans and the worst of sinners suffered eternal punishment. And Elysium, a paradise reserved for heroes and the virtuous, where the sun always shone and the fields were always in bloom. But even Elysium was still underground. Even the blessed dead were cut off from the living world, and that separation was final. A few heroes, Heracles, Orpheus, Odysseus, managed to visit the underworld and return, but they were exceptions. For most, death was a one-way journey. The Egyptians, by contrast, believed the afterlife could be better than life itself. The dead who passed the trials of the Duat, the underworld, could join the gods in the eternal fields of Aru, where barley grew twice as tall as in the living world, and no one ever hungered or grew old. But the journey was perilous. The soul had to navigate a landscape of fire and darkness, avoid demons, recite the correct spells from the Book of the Dead. And finally, in the Hall of Ma'at, the heart of the dead was weighed against the feather of truth. If the heart was heavy with sin, it was devoured by Ammit, a creature part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus. The soul was annihilated. There was no second chance. But if the heart was light, the soul was declared justified and allowed to enter paradise. It could join Osiris, god of the dead, in the afterlife. It could eat, drink, make love, enjoy all the pleasures of life without the pain. The Egyptians went to extraordinary lengths to prepare for this journey. They mummified bodies to preserve them. They filled tombs with food, furniture, servants, everything the dead might need. They wrote spells on tomb walls and coffins to guide the soul through the underworld. They believed that death was not the end, but a transformation, a journey to a better world. The underworld, in all these cosmologies, was not hell. It was not punishment. It was simply what came next, a continuation of existence in a different mode. The living and the dead inhabited the same cosmos, just in different layers. And the boundary between them, though formidable, was not absolute. 14. The geometry of the divine. As cities grew more complex, so too did their understanding of the cosmos. In Babylon, in Greece, in India, mathematicians began to realize that the heavens obeyed laws, patterns that could be expressed in numbers, angles, ratios. Geometry became a sacred language, the grammar of the divine. The Babylonians divided the sky into 360 degrees, a number chosen because it was easily divisible and because it roughly matched the number of days in a year. They divided the zodiac into 12 equal signs, each occupying 30 degrees. They calculated the length of the lunar month to within seconds of the modern value. They predicted eclipses using a cycle called the Saros, which repeats every 18 years and 11 days. This division persists to this day. Every protractor, every compass rose, every astronomer's star chart still speaks in the language invented between the Tigris and Euphrates 4,000 years ago. The Greeks took geometry even further. Euclid proved that the angles of a triangle always sum to 180 degrees. Pythagoras discovered his famous theorem. In a right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares of the other two sides. These were not inventions. They were discoveries. The truths had always existed. Humans had simply learned to see them. Plato believed geometry was the key to understanding the universe. In his dialogue, Timaeus, he proposed that the four elements, earth, water, air, fire, were made of tiny geometric shapes. Earth was made of cubes, the most stable shape. Water was made of icosahedra, which could roll and flow. Air was made of octahedra. Fire was made of tetrahedra, sharp and penetrating. These shapes, Plato argued, were not metaphors. They were literal. The universe was constructed from geometry, and to understand geometry was to understand the mind of the Creator. Above the entrance to Plato's academy was inscribed, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter." This was not snobbery, it was necessity. Philosophy for Plato required mathematical training. The forms, the eternal perfect templates from which all physical things are imperfect copies, were mathematical objects. A perfect circle existed in the realm of forms. Every circle drawn in the physical world was a flawed approximation. The physical world, then, was a shadow, a dim reflection of the true reality that existed in the mind of God. And the true reality was made of numbers and shapes, ratios, and proportions. Later, the Neoplatonists would argue that mathematics was more real than the physical world. A perfect circle could not exist in nature. Every drawn circle had imperfections, but the concept of a perfect circle existed eternally in the realm of forms. The universe we perceive with our senses is a shadow, a flawed copy of the true universe that exists in the mind of God. This idea is strange to modern ears, but it resonates with something deep. When a mathematician discovers a proof, it does not feel like invention. It feels like revelation, like uncovering something that was always there, waiting to be found. The Pythagoreans believed they could hear the mathematics of the universe in music. The Platonists believed they could see it in geometry. And both groups believed that by studying these patterns, they were studying the divine mind itself. The universe was not random. It was not arbitrary. It was ordered according to principles that could be known. And those principles were beautiful. 15. The breath of the cosmos. In many traditions, the universe was not merely structure, it was alive. The Stoics of ancient Greece and Rome believed the cosmos was a single living organism, permeated by pneuma, divine breath, or spirit. This pneuma flowed through all things, from the smallest grain of sand to the largest star. The universe was rational, purposeful, guided by a cosmic intelligence they called the Logos. Everything that happened for a reason, not because a god had willed it, but because the universe itself was rational. To live in accordance with nature, to accept one's fate without complaint, was to align oneself with the Logos. This was the path to tranquility. The Stoics saw divinity not as a distant ruler in heaven, but as the organizing principle of the cosmos itself. God was not separate from the universe. God was the universe, thinking itself, ordering itself, guiding itself toward perfection. This led to a kind of cosmic fatalism. Everything was predetermined by the Logos. The future was fixed. But this was not cause for despair. Instead, it was liberating. If everything happened for a reason, then nothing that happened could be truly bad. Pain, loss, death, these were all part of the rational order of the cosmos. To resist them was futile. To accept them was wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, wrote in his Meditations, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy." The universe was not a collection of separate objects. It was a single fabric, and every thread in that fabric was necessary. To pull at one thread was to disturb the whole. In India, a similar concept emerged. Brahman, the infinite, formless reality that underlies all existence. Brahman is not a god in the conventional sense. It is being itself, consciousness itself, the unchanging ground from which all change arises. The individual soul, the Atman, is not separate from Brahman. It is Brahman, looking at itself through the lens of a temporary body. The universe, in this view, is not something we are in. It is something we are. The separation between self and cosmos is an illusion, a trick of perception. To realize this, to truly understand it, is to achieve moksha, liberation from the cycle of birth and death. The Upanishads describe Brahman as neti-neti, not this, not that. Brahman cannot be described because it is not an object. It is the subject. It is that which knows. It is awareness itself. And yet Brahman is also present in all things. The sacred syllable Om is the sound of Brahman, the vibration from which the universe emerges. To chant Om is to attune oneself to the fundamental frequency of existence. The ancient Chinese also saw the cosmos as animated by a vital force. Qi flows through the body along meridians, and when the flow is blocked, illness results. Qi flows through the earth along dragon lines, and when those lines are disturbed, disaster follows. The sky and the earth and the human body are all part of the same system, all breathing the same breath. This is not mysticism, or rather, it is mysticism in service of something practical. If the universe is alive, then it can be healed. Imbalances can be corrected. Harmony can be restored. Acupuncture, feng shui, tai chi. These practices are based on the cosmology of Qi. They assume that the universe is not a dead mechanism, but a living process, and that humans can participate in that process, nudging it toward balance. The cosmos is not indifferent. It is responsive, and we are part of its life. 16. The turning of ages. Many ancient cosmologies saw time not as a line, but as a wheel. The Hindus spoke of the yugas, 4 great ages, each shorter and more corrupt than the last. The first age, the Satya Yuga, was a golden age when humans lived for thousands of years and Dharma, cosmic order, was fully present in the world. People were wise, virtuous, and happy. There was no disease, no conflict, no suffering. Then came the Treta Yuga, when Dharma declined by a quarter. People still lived long lives, but vice began to appear in the world. Righteousness was no longer automatic, but required effort. Then the Dvapara Yuga, when Dharma declined by half. Wars became common, lifespan shortened, knowledge became fragmented, and finally the Kali Yuga, the age we live in now, when Dharma is reduced to a mere quarter, and the world is filled with strife, ignorance, and suffering. This is the age of iron, the age of darkness. People live short lives. They lie, cheat, and betray one another. Even family bonds dissolve. The sacred texts are forgotten, the gods withdraw. But the Kali Yuga does not last forever. After 432,000 years, it will end. The world will be destroyed by fire and flood. And then the cycle will begin again with a new Satya Yuga, and the wheel will turn once more. The ancient Greeks had a similar myth. Hesiod wrote of 5 ages of man. The Golden Age, when humans lived like gods, without toil or suffering. The Silver Age, when they were childish and ignorant, living under the rule of mothers. The Bronze Age, when they were violent and warlike, killing one another in endless battles. The Age of Heroes, a brief flicker of nobility when the great warriors of myth, Achilles, Heracles, Theseus, walked the earth. And finally, the Iron Age, our age, when life is hard, trust is broken, and even family members betray one another. Hesiod wished he had been born in an earlier age, or that he might be born in a later one, after the gods had reset the world. The present, he felt, was the worst of times. The Maya, too, believed in cycles. Their cosmology held that the current world was the fifth in a series. The previous four had been destroyed, one by jaguars, one by wind, one by fire, one by flood. This world, the fifth, would one day be destroyed by earthquakes. But the wheel would turn. Another world would come. The gods would try again. This cyclical view is fundamentally different from the linear view that dominates modern Western thought. We imagine history as progress. Things get better, knowledge accumulates, civilization advances. The ancients were not so optimistic. They saw decay as inevitable. The best that could be hoped for was renewal, a return to the beginning, a chance to start over. Perhaps they understood something we have forgotten, that nothing lasts, that all structures, no matter how grand, eventually collapse, that the only constant is change. And yet, within that change, there is a pattern. The wheel turns, the seasons return. What was lost is found again, and what is found will be lost. The universe breathes in and out, creating and destroying, and we are caught in that rhythm, rising and falling with the tides of time. 17. The houses of the zodiac. Among all the structures the ancients imposed on the heavens, perhaps none was more influential than the zodiac. The Babylonians noticed that the sun, over the course of a year, passed through 12 constellations, 12 houses, each occupying roughly 30 degrees of the sky. These constellations were not arbitrary. They were chosen because they lay along the ecliptic, the path the sun appears to travel across the sky. The 12 signs: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Each had a myth, a personality, a set of qualities. Each governed a portion of the year and influenced the fate of those born under its sign. This was astrology, the belief that the positions of the celestial bodies at the moment of one's birth determined one's character, one's destiny. To modern science, astrology is pseudoscience, a relic of a more credulous age. But to the ancients, it was the most natural thing in the world. If the moon could control the tides, if the sun could govern the seasons, why should the stars not also shape human lives? The logic was impeccable. The cosmos was a unified whole. Everything was connected. As above, so below. The macrocosm and the microcosm mirrored each other. The movements of the planets did not merely predict the future, they caused it. The Greeks adopted the Babylonian zodiac and wove it into their mythology. Aries became the golden-fleeced ram that carried Phrixus to safety. Taurus became the bull Zeus transformed into when he abducted Europa. Gemini became Castor and Pollux, the twin sons of Zeus. Each constellation had a story, and those stories connected the heavens to the earth, the divine to the mortal. Astrology spread across the ancient world. In Rome, emperors consulted astrologers before making major decisions. Augustus published his horoscope to demonstrate that he was destined to rule. Tiberius kept an astrologer named Thrasyllus at his side. Even skeptics like Cicero, who publicly dismissed astrology as superstition, privately admitted that it might contain some truth. In India, astrology became Jyotisha, a complex system that integrated Hindu cosmology with careful observation of the planets. The birth chart, the positions of the planets at the moment of one's birth, was believed to encode one's karma from past lives. By studying the chart, a skilled astrologer could advise on the best times for marriage, travel, business, and spiritual practice. In China, astrology merged with the concept of yin and yang and the 5 elements wood, fire, earth, metal, water, each associated with a planet, a season, a direction, a color. The emperor's astrologers watched for celestial omens, comets, eclipses, conjunctions. These were not curiosities. They were messages from heaven, indicating whether the emperor had the mandate to rule. The zodiac was a universal language. A farmer in Egypt and a merchant in India might not share a language, a religion, or a government, but they both looked up at the same stars and saw the same signs. The heavens spoke, and everyone everywhere was trying to listen. But astrology was not just divination, it was also astronomy. The need to cast accurate horoscopes drove the development of sophisticated mathematical techniques for calculating planetary positions. Astrologers were the first astronomers. They charted the heavens, measured the year, tracked the precession of the equinoxes. The line between science and superstition was not as clear as we imagine. The ancient astrologers were doing both. They were observing the sky with care and precision. They were developing models and making predictions. But they were also seeking meaning. They were asking not just what moves, but why does it move, and what does it mean for us? And perhaps that second question, what does it mean, is not unscientific. Perhaps it is the most human question we can ask. Because the universe does affect us. The sun determines whether crops grow. The moon determines when tides rise. The stars determine which direction is north. The cosmos shapes our lives in 1,000 subtle ways. The ancients were not wrong to see themselves as part of the cosmic order. They were wrong only in the details. 18. The silence between stars. But for all the order the ancients imposed on the cosmos, there was always something that resisted explanation: the darkness. Between the stars, there was nothing, or so it seemed. A vast empty silence that no light could illuminate, no god could inhabit. The Greeks called it the void, the chaos that existed before creation and would exist after the cosmos collapsed back into itself. Some found this terrifying. The pre-Socratic philosopher Anaximander spoke of the Aperon, the infinite, the unbounded, as the source of all things. Everything that existed was born from the Aperon and would return to it. The Aperon had no qualities, no shape, no purpose. It simply was, and its presence loomed over all of creation like a shadow. Others found the void liberating. The Epicureans, followers of the philosopher Epicurus, believed the universe was made of atoms moving through infinite empty space. There were no gods governing the heavens. The stars were not divine. They were just clusters of atoms, far away. And in that emptiness, in that absence of divine oversight, humans were free to pursue happiness without fear of cosmic punishment. The gods, Epicurus taught, existed but did not care about humans. They lived in the spaces between worlds, in a state of perfect bliss, undisturbed by prayers or sacrifices. The universe ran by itself according to natural laws. Thunder was not the anger of Zeus, it was the collision of clouds. Earthquakes were not the wrath of Poseidon, they were shifts in the earth. This was radical. It stripped the cosmos of personality, of intention. It made the universe safe, not in the sense of gentle, but in the sense of predictable. The void was not hostile, it was just empty. And in that emptiness, humans could carve out a space for themselves without fear of divine retribution. But the darkness also held mystery. In the Milky Way, that river of stars smeared across the night sky, the ancients saw a road. The Egyptians called it the path the sun took through the underworld. The Greeks said it was milk spilled from the breast of the goddess Hera when she pushed away the infant Heracles, who was suckling too greedily. The Vikings believed it was the bridge Bifrost which connected Midgard to Asgard, the realm of the gods. No one knew, until much later, that the Milky Way was made of stars, so many stars so far away that they blurred into a glowing band. The darkness between stars was not empty. It was full, overfull. The universe was vaster than anyone had imagined, and the darkness was not absence, but distance. The silence, too, was an illusion. The universe was not quiet. It hummed with the music of the spheres, the vibration of atoms, the whisper of light traveling across unimaginable voids. The ancients could not hear it, but they intuited it. They knew the cosmos was alive, even in its silences. And in that darkness, that vast quiet between the lights, there was room for wonder, room for questions that had no answers, room for the unknown to remain unknown. The ancients did not try to fill every gap with explanation. They let some mysteries remain mysterious. And perhaps that is a kind of wisdom we have lost. 19. The mirror of the microcosm. As ancient thinkers mapped the cosmos, they also noticed something remarkable. The human body seemed to mirror the universe. The head was round like the heavens. The body was square like the earth. The eyes were sun and moon. The breath was wind. The blood was water. The bones were stone. And the spirit, the animating force that made the body live, was the same pneuma, the same key, the same divine breath that moved the stars. This idea appeared everywhere. In ancient Greece, Plato argued that the cosmos and the human soul were built on the same principles. Both were composed of the same elements, arranged in the same proportions. The soul was a microcosm, a small universe, and the universe was a macrocosm, a vast soul. The soul, Plato said, had three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. These corresponded to the three regions of the cosmos: the heavens, reason; the air, spirit; and the earth, appetite. To live well was to keep these three parts in balance, just as the cosmos itself was kept in balance by the movements of the spheres. In China, physicians studied the flow of qi through the body and mapped it onto the flow of qi through the cosmos. The organs corresponded to planets. The seasons corresponded to phases of health. The heart was fire, the kidneys were water, the liver was wood, the lungs were metal, the spleen was earth. To heal the body was to restore cosmic balance. Acupuncture worked by redirecting the flow of qi along meridians that mirrored the dragon lines of the earth. Herbal medicine worked by matching the qualities of plants to the qualities of organs. Everything was connected. The body was not separate from the world. It was a miniature version of it. In India, the chakras' energy centers along the spine were seen as mirroring the structure of the universe. The root chakra connected the individual to the earth, the sacral chakra to water, the solar plexus to fire, the heart to air, the throat to ether, the third eye to mind, the crown chakra to the infinite. The journey of spiritual awakening was a journey through the cosmos, from the densest matter to the purest consciousness. To raise the kundalini, the serpent energy coiled at the base of the spine was to ascend through the layers of reality, from earth to heaven, from body to spirit. This was not mere metaphor. The ancients believed that by understanding the universe, they could understand themselves, and by perfecting themselves, they could align with the universe and achieve harmony, health, enlightenment. The physician Paracelsus, writing in the Renaissance but drawing on ancient wisdom, declared, "Man is a microcosm or a little world, because he is an extract from all the stars and planets of the whole firmament, from the earth and the elements, and so he is their quintessence." We are, in this view, the universe in miniature. Every atom in our bodies was forged in the heart of a star. Every element in our blood was scattered across space by a supernova. We are made of stardust, literally. The ancients did not know this fact, but they intuited it. They felt the connection in their bones. The cosmos was not out there. It was in here. Every human being carried a universe inside them. 20. The end of the ancient sky. By the end of antiquity, the cosmos had been thoroughly mapped. The Ptolemaic system, with its nested spheres and epicycles, could predict the positions of the planets with stunning accuracy. Astrology had become a sophisticated art, practiced in every major civilization. The myths and stories of the stars were known by heart, passed down through generations. And yet, something was shifting. In the Islamic world, scholars translated the works of the Greeks and began to refine them. Astronomers like al-Battani and al-Sufi made observations that corrected Ptolemy's calculations. They cataloged stars, measured the length of the year with astonishing precision, and developed instruments, astrolabes, quadrants that allowed for more accurate celestial navigation. The astrolabe, in particular, was a marvel. It was a handheld model of the cosmos, with rotating disks representing the celestial sphere. By aligning the disks with the positions of the stars, a traveler could determine their latitude, calculate the time, even predict the positions of the sun and planets. It was a computer built from brass and mathematics, encoding the structure of the universe in a device small enough to hold in one hand. But the greatest revolution was still centuries away. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus published De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium on the revolutions of the celestial spheres, and argued that the Earth was not the center of the universe. The Sun was. The Earth, along with the other planets, orbited the Sun in circles. It was not immediately accepted. The idea contradicted Scripture, contradicted common sense, contradicted Aristotle. If the Earth moved, why didn't we feel it? Why didn't objects fly off into space? Why didn't the stars show parallax, a shift in position, as the Earth moved through its orbit? These were reasonable objections, and Copernicus had no good answers. His model was published, but it was treated as a mathematical convenience, not a description of reality. The ancient cosmology held. Then came Tycho Brahe, who made the most accurate naked-eye observations of planetary positions ever recorded. Then Kepler, who used Tycho's data to discover that planets moved in ellipses, not circles. Then Galileo, who turned his telescope to the heavens and saw mountains on the moon, moons orbiting Jupiter, phases of Venus. The heavens were not perfect. They were worlds, like our world, with their own landscapes and motions. Newton explained that planets moved because of gravity, a force that operated equally in the heavens and on Earth. The distinction between the celestial and the terrestrial, the foundation of ancient cosmology, collapsed. The universe was not a set of nested spheres. It was infinite space, filled with countless stars, each perhaps with its own planets, its own worlds. The ancient sky was gone. But what replaced it? A universe of mathematics and mechanism. A universe that could be understood through equations and experiments. A universe that did not need gods to function. This was liberating. It gave humanity power. We could predict eclipses, navigate by the stars, send spacecraft to other planets. We could probe the edges of the cosmos and the depths of the atom. But it was also alienating. The universe, in the modern view, does not care about us. It is not designed for us. We are accidents, brief sparks of consciousness in an indifferent void. The stars do not watch us. They do not listen to our prayers. They simply burn, oblivious. The ancients lived in a cosmos that was alive, responsive, meaningful. We live in a universe that is dead, mechanical, silent. Which view is more true? Perhaps both. Perhaps the universe is both mechanism and meaning, both matter and mind. Perhaps we are still discovering what the cosmos is. The ancient cosmologies were wrong in their details, but they were right about something essential. We are part of the cosmos. We are not separate from it. We are made of it, shaped by it, connected to it in ways we are only beginning to understand. The stars still turn. The earth still spins. The same laws that governed the heavens 4,000 years ago still govern them today. The universe has not changed. Only our understanding of it has. 21. What they saw that we cannot, and yet. For all that we have gained telescopes, spacecraft, equations that describe the birth and death of stars, we have also lost something. The ancients saw the sky with naked eyes, unfiltered by light pollution or glass lenses. They saw it every night, not as a curiosity, but as a necessity. The stars were their calendar, their compass, their clock. They knew the sky intimately, in a way most of us never will. A Babylonian shepherd could look at the stars and know the season, the time of night, the direction to travel. An Egyptian priest could glance at the eastern horizon just before dawn and know which god was rising, which festival was approaching, which prayers to recite. We have lost that familiarity. Most of us can barely identify the Big Dipper. The night sky is a stranger to us, obscured by city lights and forgotten in the rush of daily life. And we have lost the stories. Where we see hydrogen and helium, nuclear fusion and gravitational collapse, the ancients saw gods and heroes, battles and romances. They saw meaning. The universe was not indifferent. It was watching, it cared. This is not ignorance. It is a different kind of knowledge, poetic, mythic, symbolic. The stories the ancients told about the stars were not meant to be literal descriptions. They were meant to encode wisdom, to pass down values, to connect the human and the cosmic in a web of meaning. When the Egyptians said Ra sailed across the sky in a boat, they were not describing physics. They were describing the experience of living the journey from birth to death, the struggle against chaos, the hope of renewal. When the Greeks said the planets moved in perfect circles, they were not making a factual claim. They were expressing a conviction that the universe was ordered, comprehensible, beautiful. When the Hindus said the universe was born from a cosmic sacrifice, they were teaching that existence requires suffering, that creation is never free, that we owe a debt to the forces that made us. These are truths that cannot be measured with instruments, but they are truths nonetheless. The ancient cosmologies were ways of making sense of existence. They were attempts to answer the big questions. Why are we here? What is our place in the cosmos? How should we live? Modern science does not answer these questions. It tells us how the universe works, but not why. It tells us what we are made of, but not what we are for. The ancients understood that a cosmology is not just a map of the heavens. It is a framework for meaning. It tells you not just where you are, but who you are. And perhaps that is what we miss most. Not the geocentric model, or the music of the spheres, or the dome of heaven, but the sense that we matter, that we are part of a story, that the universe is not a cold void, but a home. 22. The dream of the cosmos. There is a recurring dream in ancient cosmology, the dream of ascent. The shaman climbs the world tree to reach the realm of the gods. The pharaoh's soul ascends through the Duat to join Ra in the solar bark. The philosopher contemplates the forms and rises above the cave of shadows into the light of truth. The mystic merges with Brahman and transcends the cycle of birth and death. The hero is catastrophized, transformed into a constellation and placed among the eternal stars. This dream is the dream of escape. Escape from the body, from time, from suffering, from death. Escape from the earth and into the heavens, where everything is perfect and nothing ever ends. It is a dream born from the hardness of life. The ancients suffered. They watched their children die from disease. They endured famines, wars, plagues. Life was brutal and short. And so they looked up at the stars eternal, unchanging, and dreamed of joining them. But there is another dream, less often spoken, but always present. The dream of return. The cycle completes. The soul is reborn. The universe is destroyed and remade. Spring follows winter. The seed becomes, the plant becomes the seed. What was lost is found. What was broken is healed. The cosmos, in the ancient imagination, is not a place we leave behind. It is a place we return to again and again, forever. Both dreams are still with us. We send spacecraft beyond the solar system, carrying messages to whoever might find them. We search for exoplanets, hoping to find another Earth. We build telescopes to peer back to the beginning of time, to see the first light, the first stars, the moment when the universe opened its eyes. This is the dream of ascent. We want to escape the Earth, to become cosmic, to touch the infinite. But we also long for return. We look up at the stars and feel homesick for something we cannot name. We tell stories about alien visitors, about ancient astronauts, about gods who came from the sky. We imagine that we are not alone, that somewhere out there is a parent, a creator, a home. The cosmos is both destination and origin, both future and past. It is where we are going and where we came from. The ancients understood this, and we, with all our knowledge, are only beginning to remember. We are made of star stuff, Carl Sagan said. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, all of it was cooked in the cores of dying stars billions of years ago. We are the universe made conscious. We are the cosmos looking at itself. This is not poetry. It is fact. But it sounds like the ancient myths. It echoes their deepest intuition, that we are not separate from the universe. We are part of it. We belong to it. And perhaps that is why the ancient cosmologies still speak to us. Not because they are scientifically accurate, but because they express a truth we have forgotten, that the cosmos is not just a place we study. It is a place we inhabit. It is our home. 23. The names we give the Dark One of the most haunting aspects of ancient cosmology is what was left unnamed. The Greeks had no word for the universe as a whole. They spoke of the cosmos, the ordered world, but beyond the sphere of the fixed stars, they did not speculate. There was nothing there, or, if there was, it could not be known. The boundary of the knowable was clear. Inside the sphere of the stars, there was order, light, meaning. Outside, there was the void, and the void could not be named because it had no qualities. It was not a place. It was the absence of place. The Hebrews spoke of Sheol, the place of the dead, as a land of shadows where even God's light did not reach. It was not punishment. It was simply absence. A place outside the structure of the cosmos where even the categories of existence broke down. The Norse described Ginnungagap, the yawning void that existed before creation. It was not nothing. It was potential. The gap where something could happen, where fire and ice could meet and the world could be born. But it was also terrifying. A chasm without bottom, without walls, without orientation. To fall into it was to fall forever. But none of these cultures tried to fill the void with explanation. They let it remain mysterious. They respected what could not be known. In our age, we are less comfortable with mystery. We push the boundaries of knowledge further and further, and when we encounter darkness, we invent terms to describe it. Dark matter, dark energy, the multiverse. These are not explanations. They are placeholders, names we give to our ignorance. We know that ordinary matter, the stuff we can see, makes up only about 5 of the universe. The rest is dark matter, 27, and dark energy, 68. We don't know what either of these things is. We can infer their existence from their gravitational effects, but we cannot see them, touch them, or understand them. In a sense, we have returned to the ancient cosmos. The universe is mostly made of things we cannot perceive, ruled by laws we do not understand. The darkness is vast. The light is small. Perhaps the ancients were wiser. They knew that some things must remain unnamed, that the cosmos, for all its order, still harbored depths beyond comprehension, that the darkness was not a problem to be solved, but a presence to be acknowledged. They lived with uncertainty, and in that uncertainty, they found room for awe. We have gained precision, but lost wonder. We can measure the universe to 14 decimal places, but we have forgotten how to be astonished by it. The ancients knew that the cosmos was both knowable and unknowable, both ordered and mysterious, both light and dark. And perhaps that is the deepest truth, that the universe will always be larger than our understanding of it, that there will always be darkness beyond the light, that the cosmos will always hold more questions than answers. And that is not a failure, it is an invitation. 24. The eternal return. There is a strange comfort in the ancient cosmologies. They tell us that nothing is permanent, every empire falls, every age ends, every star eventually burns out. But they also tell us that nothing is ever truly lost. The cycle always completes, the wheel always turns. Death is followed by rebirth. Chaos is followed by order. Winter is followed by spring. The Stoics called this the eternal return. They believed that the universe would one day collapse into fire ekpyrosis, the great conflagration, and then be reborn exactly as it was, with every atom in the same position, every event unfolding in the same way. The same people would be born, live the same lives, make the same choices, die the same deaths. Forever. It is a horrifying thought. It strips away the possibility of progress, of change, of meaning. If everything repeats eternally, then nothing matters. And yet, the Stoics found peace in it. If this moment, this specific moment, with all its joys and sorrows, is destined to recur forever, then it is infinitely precious. It is not a disposable fragment of time, but a permanent part of the cosmos. To live well, to accept fate with grace, is to affirm the eternal return, to say yes to the universe exactly as it is. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs." This is not resignation, it is radical acceptance. It is the recognition that the universe is what it is, and our suffering comes not from the universe, but from our resistance to it. The ancient cosmologies, with their cycles and circles, taught this lesson. The universe does not move in a straight line. It does not progress toward a goal. It simply is, turning and returning, creating and destroying, in an eternal dance that has no beginning and no end. The ancients did not fear repetition. They embraced it. The farmer sowed seeds knowing they would grow, wither, die, and be sown again. The priest performed the same rituals year after year because the cosmos demanded repetition. Order was maintained through repetition. The universe itself was a ritual, endlessly repeated. We have lost this. We live in linear time. We believe in progress, in innovation, in the new. We throw away the old and chase the next thing. But the cosmos does not work that way. The stars still move in the same patterns the Babylonians charted 4,000 years ago. The seasons still turn. The earth still spins. The ancient rhythms persist, whether we acknowledge them or not. And perhaps there is wisdom in returning to those rhythms, in recognizing that we are not separate from the cycles of the cosmos, but embedded in them, that our lives, like the lives of stars, follow patterns that are larger and older than we are. The universe turns, and we turn with it. 25. The stars still speak. On a clear night, far from the glow of cities, you can still see what the ancients saw. The Milky Way arcing overhead like a river of light. The constellations slowly wheeling across the sky. The planets wandering through the zodiac. It is the same sky that hung over Babylon, over Athens, over the pyramids, over the ziggurats. The ancient cosmologies were wrong in their details. The earth is not the center, the sky is not a dome, the stars are not fixed on a crystalline sphere. But the ancients were not wrong about everything. They were right that the universe is ordered, that it follows laws, that it can be understood, at least partially, by patient observation and careful thought. They were right that the cosmos is beautiful, that its patterns are worthy of reverence, that to contemplate the heavens is to participate in something larger than oneself. They were right that we are connected to the stars, not because our fates are written in the zodiac, but because we are made of stardust literally. The calcium in our bones, the iron in our blood, the oxygen we breathe, all of it, was forged in the hearts of ancient stars and scattered across space when those stars died. We are the cosmos, looking at itself. The ancients did not know this fact, but they intuited it. They saw the connection. They felt it in their bodies, in their dreams, in their rituals and myths. And perhaps that is the deepest truth of the ancient cosmologies. They remind us that we are not separate from the universe. We are not observers standing outside, looking in. We are participants. We are part of the story the cosmos is telling. The ancients imagined the universe as a living thing, as a breathing organism, as a vast mind thinking itself into existence. And maybe, in some strange way, they were right. Maybe the universe is not just matter and energy obeying mindless laws. Maybe it is experience itself. Maybe consciousness is not an accident, a fluke, a meaningless byproduct of chemistry. Maybe it is what the universe has been trying to do all along, to wake up, to see itself, to know itself. And we, these fragile bodies, these brief lives, are the eyes through which the cosmos finally looks back at itself and understands. The ancients imagined gods in the heavens. Perhaps they were describing us, not as we are now, but as we might become, not immortal, not all-powerful, but awake, present, aware. Standing beneath the stars, feeling the cold night air, hearing the silence between the constellations, we can still feel what they felt. that sense of smallness and vastness, that recognition of pattern and mystery, that intuition that the universe is not random, not meaningless, not dead. The stars still speak. We have only to listen. They speak in the language of light, traveling across billions of years to reach our eyes. They speak in the language of gravity, holding galaxies together, bending space itself. They speak in the language of time, marking out the hours and days and years, the cycles and seasons that govern our lives. And they speak, too, in the language of wonder, that feeling that rises in the chest when you look up and see the Milky Way for the first time. That sense of vertigo, standing on a spinning planet, looking out into the infinite. That recognition, both terrifying and exhilarating, that the cosmos is vast and we are small, and yet we are part of it, and it is part of us. The ancient cosmologies tried to capture this feeling in words, in stories, in stone monuments aligned to the stars. They built models of the universe not just to predict eclipses or plant crops, but to make sense of existence itself, to find their place in the cosmic order, to feel connected to something larger and older and more enduring than any human life. We are still doing this. We are still building models, still telling stories, still trying to understand where we fit in the vast architecture of everything. The tools have changed. The language has changed. But the questions remain the same. What holds the stars? Where do we come from? Why are we here? The ancients did not have the final answers. Neither do we. But they understood something essential, that to ask the questions is itself a kind of answer, that to look up at the night sky and wonder is to participate in the cosmos, to join the great conversation that has been going on since the first human eyes turned skyward and asked, "What is all this?" And the universe, in its turning, in its burning, in its endless unfolding, whispers back, "You are. You are part of this. You are the universe waking up and asking itself questions." The ancients imagined the cosmos, and in imagining it, they created something beautiful. Not just a model of the heavens, but a vision of what it means to be human, to be small and mortal and finite, and yet capable of reaching across the void and touching the infinite. That vision still echoes in us. When we look up at the stars, we see with ancient eyes. We feel what they felt. We wonder as they wondered. The cosmos has not changed. We have not changed. We are still the same creatures, standing on the same earth, looking up at the same sky, asking the same questions. And in that continuity, in that unbroken chain of wonder stretching back to the very beginning, there is something sacred. The stars still speak, and we, listening in the darkness, hear them still. Good night.